What happens when Hollywood's most charismatic comeback story meets daytime television's most controversial voice? The answer involves heated accusations, personal attacks, and a dramatic exit that left the entire studio in stunned silence. Before we dive into this explosive encounter, make sure to hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you think about celebrity interviews that go completely off the rails. The tension in the View studio was palpable from the moment Robert Downey Jr. walked onto the set. Fresh off promoting his latest project, the actor who had transformed from Hollywood pariah to beloved Iron Man seemed relaxed as he settled into the guest chair. The other hosts, Whoopi Goldberg, Sarah Haynes, and Alyssa Farah Griffin, welcomed him warmly. But Joy Behar had a different energy entirely. Her smile seemed forced, her posture rigid, and anyone paying attention could sense she had an agenda. "So, Robert," Joy began, her voice carrying that familiar edge that regular viewers know all too well. "Let's talk about your past. You've been very open about your struggles with addiction, your legal troubles, your time in prison. But what I want to know is, how can audiences trust someone who made so many bad choices for so many years?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Robert's eyebrows raised slightly, but his famous charm remained intact. "Well, Joy, I think that's exactly why people can trust me. I've been to the bottom. I've crawled back up, and I've been honest about every step of that journey. When someone has nothing left to hide, when they've already faced their worst demons publicly, that's when you know they're being real with you." But Joy wasn't satisfied with that answer. She leaned forward, her voice becoming more pointed. "But don't you think there's a difference between being honest about your mistakes and actually learning from them? I mean, how many times did you promise to get clean before you actually did it? How many people did you let down? Your family, your colleagues, the studios that invested in you." The other hosts exchanged uncomfortable glances. This wasn't the typical softball interview they usually conducted. Sarah Haynes tried to interject with a lighter question about his latest film, but Joy held up her hand, clearly not finished. "I'm not trying to be difficult here," Joy continued, though her tone suggested otherwise. "But I think our viewers deserve to know. When someone has a pattern of behavior, when they've repeatedly made the same mistakes, what makes this time different? What makes you different now?" Robert's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. The practiced smile remained, but something had shifted in his eyes. "Joy, I appreciate your concern for your viewers. I really do. But what I find interesting is that you're asking me to prove I've changed when the proof is literally everywhere. My work, my family, my relationships, my sobriety. It's all been consistent for years now. So, what I'm curious about is why you seem so invested in keeping me in the past." The studio audience stirred uncomfortably. This wasn't the playful banter they were used to seeing on daytime television. Joy's co-hosts were clearly trying to navigate the increasingly awkward situation, but she pressed on. "I'm not trying to keep you in the past," she said, her voice rising slightly. "I'm trying to understand how someone can go from being so irresponsible, so unreliable, to suddenly being Hollywood's golden boy again. It just seems, I don't know, convenient." The word convenient landed like a slap. Robert's posture straightened, and for the first time since sitting down, his composure cracked just slightly. "Convenient? Joy, do you have any idea what it's like to rebuild your entire life from scratch? To earn back the trust of everyone you've ever worked with? To prove yourself not just professionally but personally every single day? There's nothing convenient about that process." "But that's just it," Joy shot back, clearly feeling she had found her opening. "You make it sound so noble, this journey of yours. But let's be honest, you didn't get clean because you suddenly saw the light. You got clean because you had to, because the alternative was losing everything permanently. So forgive me if I'm not ready to canonize you just yet." The other hosts looked mortified. Whoopi was clearly trying to think of a way to redirect the conversation, while Sarah and Alyssa sat in stunned silence. Robert, however, seemed to have found his footing again. His voice when he spoke was calm, but carried a steel edge that hadn't been there before. "You know what, Joy? You're absolutely right about one thing. I didn't get clean because I'm some kind of saint. I got clean because I had to make a choice between life and death, between being present for my family or losing them forever. And yes, that choice was forced on me by circumstances. But here's what you're missing, what you seem determined to ignore. The choice to stay clean, to rebuild, to become a better person. That's a choice I make every single day. And I've been making that choice successfully for years now." Joy leaned back in her chair, but her expression showed she wasn't backing down. And that's admirable, Robert. It really is. But what concerns me is this narrative that Hollywood loves so much. This idea that all is forgiven as long as you can still make money for the studios. I mean, let's be real here. Would you have gotten all these second chances if you weren't Robert Downey Jr.? If you weren't charming and talented and profitable? The question was clearly designed to provoke, and it worked. Robert's eyes flashed with something that looked like anger, though his voice remained controlled. So, what you're saying is that I don't deserve the life I've built, that my sobriety, my family, my career, it's all just some kind of Hollywood privilege. That's a pretty cynical way to look at someone's recovery, Joy. I'm not saying you don't deserve it, Joy replied, though her tone suggested she might be thinking exactly that. I'm saying that not everyone gets the same opportunities to rebuild their life after making the kinds of mistakes you made. And maybe, just maybe, we should acknowledge that before we start celebrating comeback stories. The studio had gone completely silent. Even the cameras seemed to be holding their breath. Robert stared at Joy for a long moment, his expression unreadable. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried more weight than if he had been shouting. You know what, Joy? I think I understand what this is really about. You're not interested in my recovery or my journey or even my mistakes. You're interested in tearing down someone who's built something positive from something negative, and that says a lot more about you than it does about me. Joy's face flushed red at Robert's words. But instead of backing down, she doubled down with a vengeance. Oh, so now I'm the bad guy for asking tough questions, for not just sitting here and nodding along while you rewrite history. That's rich, Robert. That's really rich. That's really rich. I'm not rewriting anything, Robert replied, his voice growing sharper. I'm simply pointing out that you seem more interested in keeping me in the gutter than acknowledging that people can actually change. But you know what? I'm starting to understand why you're so invested in this narrative. Whoopi finally found her voice, attempting to intervene. Okay, let's maybe take a step back here. No, Joy interrupted, her voice cutting through the studio like a knife. Let's not take a step back. Let's talk about what Robert here is really suggesting. That I'm somehow jealous or bitter or whatever psychological analysis he's trying to project onto me. Well, let me tell you something, Robert. I've been in this business for decades, and I've seen plenty of people claim they've changed. I've seen plenty of comeback stories that turned out to be nothing more than good publicity. Robert's laugh was sharp and humorless. So, because other people have disappointed you, I'm automatically guilty by association. That's some impressive logic, Joy. Really top-notch journalism there. Don't you dare question my journalism, Joy snapped, pointing her finger at him. I've been asking tough questions since before you were even a household name. I've interviewed presidents, world leaders, celebrities who actually have something meaningful to say. And what I've learned is that when someone gets defensive about their past, when they start attacking the person asking the questions, that's usually when you know you've hit a nerve. The audience was completely silent now, watching this train wreck unfold in real time. Sarah Haynes looked like she wanted to crawl under the table, while Alyssa Farah Griffin sat frozen, clearly unsure how to navigate this disaster. Robert leaned forward, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. You want to know what nerve you've hit, Joy? It's not about my past. It's about the fact that you're sitting here on national television, essentially telling millions of people that redemption is impossible. That if you make mistakes, if you struggle, if you fall down, you should just stay down. Because according to you, any attempt to rebuild your life is just privilege and publicity. That's not what I said, Joy protested. But her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Robert challenged. Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you're saying that anyone who's ever struggled with addiction, anyone who's ever made serious mistakes, should just accept that they're forever defined by their worst moments. And you know what that kind of thinking does to people who are actually trying to get clean right now? It tells them there's no point in trying. Joy's expression shifted, and for a moment, it seemed like she might actually consider his words. But then her defenses went back up, stronger than before. Don't you dare try to make this about helping people with addiction. This is about accountability, Robert. This is about not letting celebrity status erase the consequences of your actions. What consequences? Robert's voice was rising now, his famous composure finally cracking. What consequences are you talking about? I lost my career. I lost my family's trust. I lost years of my life. I went to prison. I had to rebuild everything from nothing. What more do you want from me? What would actually satisfy you? I want honesty, Joy shot back. I want you to stop acting like you're some kind of inspiration and admit that you're just lucky. Lucky that you're talented. Lucky that you're charming. Lucky that Hollywood decided to give you another chance when thousands of other people don't get that same opportunity. Robert stared at her for a long moment, his jaw working as he processed her words. When he finally spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. You know what, Joy? You're absolutely right. I am lucky. I'm lucky that I survived when a lot of people in my situation don't. I'm lucky that I had people who didn't give up on me, even when I had given up on myself. I'm lucky that I got the help I needed when I needed it. But here's what you're missing. What you seem completely incapable of understanding. Being lucky doesn't make my recovery any less real. Being lucky doesn't make my sobriety any less valid. And being lucky doesn't give you the right to diminish what I've built. Joy's face was getting redder by the minute. I'm not diminishing anything. I'm just saying that maybe, just maybe, we should stop holding up celebrity comeback stories as some kind of universal inspiration when the reality is that most people don't get the same resources, the same support, the same opportunities to start over. So, because not everyone gets the same opportunities, I should what? Apologize for mine? Feel guilty about my recovery? Hide the fact that I've turned my life around. Robert's voice was incredulous. Do you have any idea how backwards that thinking is? Whoopi tried again to intervene, her voice stronger this time. Look, I think we're all getting a little heated here, and maybe we should. No, Whoopi, Robert said, his eyes never leaving Joy's face. I think Joy has something she wants to say. I think she's been building up to this from the moment I walked in here. So let's hear it, Joy. What is it you really want to say to me? Joy's composure finally cracked completely. Fine. You want to know what I really think? I think you're a fraud. I think this whole reformed, grateful, spiritual journey nonsense is just another performance. I think you're the same selfish, reckless person you always were, just with better publicists and a more expensive suit. The studio went dead silent. Even the camera operator seemed to freeze. Robert sat back in his chair, a slow smile spreading across his face, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. There it is, he said softly. There's the real Joy Behar. Not the tough journalist, asking hard questions, but the bitter person who can't stand to see someone succeed after they've failed. You know what the saddest part is? I actually came here today excited to talk to you. I thought you were someone who understood struggle, someone who might appreciate what it takes to rebuild your life. But instead, I find out you're just another person who's more comfortable with people when they're down than when they're up. Joy's mouth opened and closed like a fish, clearly struggling to find words. I am not bitter, she finally managed. I am not. Yes, you are, Robert interrupted, standing up from his chair. You're bitter and you're cruel, and you're using your platform to tear down someone who spent years building themselves back up. And the worst part, you're doing it in front of millions of people who might be struggling with their own demons, who might be looking for hope that they can change their lives, too. The other hosts looked mortified. Sarah Haynes was practically hiding behind her notes, while Alyssa looked like she was ready to run. Whoopi was trying to signal to the producers, but Robert wasn't finished. You want to know what's really sad about this whole thing, Joy? I've been sober for over a decade. I've been married to the same woman for years. I've built a successful career. I've been a good father. I've tried to use my platform to help other people who are struggling. And none of that matters to you. None of that is real to you because you've decided that I'm still the same person I was at my worst. And nothing I do will ever change that in your mind. Joy finally found her voice again, but it came out as a snarl. You want a cookie for doing what you're supposed to do? You want praise for being a decent human being? That's not how it works, Robert. That's not how life works. Robert's laugh was bitter. No, Joy. I don't want a cookie. I don't want praise. I don't want anything from you. What I want is for you to stop using your position to spread the toxic message that people can't change, that recovery is fake, that redemption is impossible, because that message kills people, Joy. It literally kills people. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Joy's face went from red to white, the weight of Robert's accusation hitting her like a physical blow. For a moment, she looked genuinely shaken, but then her defenses slammed back into place harder than ever. How dare you? She whispered, her voice trembling with rage. How dare you suggest that I'm responsible for people's choices? How dare you try to make me the villain here when you're the one who spent years destroying your life and hurting everyone around you? Robert's eyes flashed with something dangerous. I'm not making you the villain, Joy. You're doing that all by yourself. Every word out of your mouth today has been designed to tear me down, to convince your audience that change is impossible, that recovery is a lie. And you're doing it with a smile on your face like it's entertainment. This is not entertainment, Joy shot back, her voice rising to match his. This is journalism. This is asking the hard questions that your other interviewers are too starstruck to ask. This is holding you accountable for your actions instead of just letting you sell your redemption story to the highest bidder. Robert took a step closer to her chair, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. My redemption story? Is that what you think this is? You think I got sober, rebuilt my relationships, and turned my life around just so I could come on talk shows and spin some fairy tale? You think my wife, my kids, my sobriety? It's all just part of some elaborate publicity stunt. I think you're a very good actor, Joy replied, her voice steady, but her hands shaking slightly. I think you've convinced a lot of people that you've changed, and maybe you've even convinced yourself. But I've been in this business long enough to know that people don't really change. They just get better at hiding who they really are. The studio was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The camera operators were frozen, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut away. The other hosts looked like they were watching a car crash in slow motion, horrified but unable to look away. Robert stared at Joy for a long moment, his expressions cycling through anger, disappointment, and finally something that looked almost like pity. You know what, Joy? I feel sorry for you. I really do. Because if you truly believe that people can't change, if you honestly think that redemption is impossible, then you must live in a very dark, very lonely world. And I can't imagine what that must be like. Joy's composure finally snapped completely. Don't you psychoanalyze me. You self-righteous has been. Don't you dare sit there and pretend like you understand anything about my life or my world. You're nothing but a drug addict who got lucky, and all the fancy suits and movie roles in the world can't change that. The words hit the studio like a bomb. Sarah Haynes audibly gasped while Alyssa put her hand over her mouth in shock. Whoopi looked like she wanted to disappear entirely. Even the crew members exchanged horrified glances. Robert stood perfectly still for a moment, his face expressionless. When he finally spoke, his voice was so calm it was almost eerie. And there it is, the real Joy Behar. Not the tough journalist, not the hard-hitting interviewer, just a cruel person who thinks addiction is a character flaw instead of a disease. Just someone who believes that if you've ever fallen down, you should stay down forever. He turned to look at the other hosts, his expression sad but resolute. Ladies, I want you to know that I have nothing but respect for you and for this show, but I can't sit here and be part of this anymore. I can't enable this kind of toxic thinking. Joy seemed to realize she had gone too far, her voice becoming desperate. Oh, so now you're going to storm out? Now you're going to throw a tantrum because someone finally called you out. How mature, Robert. How evolved. Robert turned back to her one last time, his eyes burning with controlled fury. I'm not storming out because you called me out, Joy. I'm leaving because you just told millions of people that addiction is a moral failing, that recovery is impossible, and that anyone who's ever struggled with substance abuse is fundamentally broken, and I won't be part of spreading that message. He started to unclip his microphone, his movements deliberate and controlled. You want to know what's really sad about all of this? I came here today hoping to have a real conversation about second chances, about the possibility of change, about hope. Instead, I found out that one of daytime television's most influential voices thinks that people like me should just accept that we're worthless and move on. Joy's face was a mask of fury and embarrassment. You are not the victim here, Robert. You are not the wronged party. You made your choices, and you have to live with the consequences. And I do live with the consequences, Robert replied, his voice steady despite the anger in his eyes. Every single day. The difference is I've learned from those consequences. I've grown from them. I've used them to become a better person, a better father, a better husband. But you don't want to hear about that, do you? You want me to stay stuck in the worst version of myself, because it makes you feel better about your own choices. He finished removing his microphone and set it carefully on the coffee table. You know what the saddest part of all this is? There are people watching this right now who are struggling with addiction, who are trying to get clean, who are hoping that change is possible, and you just told them all that they're wasting their time. Joy's voice cracked slightly as she replied, I never said that. I never said change was impossible. Yes, you did, Robert said quietly. You said it with every question, every accusation, every sneer. You said it when you called my recovery a performance, when you dismissed my sobriety as luck, when you reduced everything I've built to nothing more than good publicity. And worst of all, you said it when you called me nothing but a drug addict who got lucky." He straightened his jacket and looked directly into the camera. To anyone watching this who might be struggling with addiction, who might be wondering if they can change their life, let me tell you something. You can. Change is possible. Recovery is real. And don't let anyone, not even someone on television, tell you otherwise. Joy made one last desperate attempt to regain control. "So that's it? You're just going to leave? You're going to run away because someone asked you tough questions?" Robert paused at the edge of the set, turning back to look at her one final time. "These weren't tough questions, Joy. Tough questions come from a place of genuine curiosity, from a desire to understand, from respect for the person you're interviewing. What you did today was something else entirely. This was a character assassination disguised as journalism, and I won't be part of it." With that, he walked off the set, leaving behind a studio full of stunned silence and one very red-faced host. The camera lingered on Joy's face for a moment, capturing her expression of shock, anger, and something that might have been shame, before finally cutting to commercial. The entire exchange had lasted less than 20 minutes, but it would be talked about for weeks. Not because of what Robert had said, but because of how Joy had revealed herself to be exactly the kind of person who believes that some people are beyond redemption, that some mistakes are unforgivable, and that success after failure is somehow suspicious. In the end, Robert Downey Jr. had done more than just walk off a talk show. He had walked away from the toxic idea that people can't change, that recovery is fake, and that hope is nothing more than good publicity. And in doing so, he had shown millions of viewers what real strength looks like. So, what do you think? Was Robert right to walk away? Or should he have stayed and continued the fight? Let me know in the comments below. This powerful moment was brought to you by Shoaib Buzzer Stories, where truth, drama, and redemption meet.